The librarian trained us even. The combination of the two leaves chaos. The librarian trained us even.
Test, test. Oh, I don't think. Test, test. No? Can you hear me? Is this mic working? Test, test, test.
I mean, that's the second time I've heard them say that. It's obvious with the
Good evening. Welcome to the Matthews Board of Commissioners meeting for May 24th, 2021. I'm Mayor John Higdon, and I'm just really excited to be back in person again and to bang this gavel for the first time in almost a year, I think. So I'd like to start with some introductions. On my left and your right is Commissioner Larry Whitley, Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Renee Garner, Town Manager Hazen Blodgett, Town Attorney Charlie Buckley, Commissioner Dave Bland, Commissioner John Urban, Commissioner Ken McCool, I don't know, our Town Clerk Lori Canapino, Planning Director Jay Camp, and our Communications Coordinator Maureen Keith. Sorry, it's been a while. I know who you guys are. I'd like to remind everybody this meeting of the Board of Commissioners is being held both in person and remotely, and any member who is attending remotely will be called on by name to state their vote verbally for the record. Tonight, nobody is attending remotely. Commissioner Jeff Miller is not available for tonight's meeting. We'll start with an invocation. Commissioner Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this evening, a former commissioner had given this prayer, invocation, moment of reflection several years ago, and I thought it was just timely to sort of bring it back because I thought it was pretty good. People are often unresponsible, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. I'd like to move on to the next two agenda items. I'm going to read a couple of proclamations. We'll start with Juneteenth.
The pledge.
I'm sorry, do the pledge. Boy, it's been a while since we've done that. Please join me in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the proclamations. The first is to recognize the Juneteenth Independence Day. Whereas Juneteenth, also known as Juneteenth Independence Day, Emancipation Day, Emancipation Celebration, and Freedom Day, is the oldest African-American holiday observance in the United States, commemorating the emancipation of those enslaved in the United States. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates the day freedom was proclaimed to all slaves in the South by Union General Granger on June 19, 1865, more than 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation by President Abraham Lincoln. And whereas on September 22nd, 1862, President Lincoln issued the celebrated Emancipation Proclamation, warning the rebellious Confederate states that he would declare their slaves forever free if those states did not return to the Union by January 1st, 1863. Enforcement of the Emancipation Proclamation occurred only in the Confederate states that were under Union Army control. And whereas prior to the end of the Civil War on January 31st, Congress passed the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which abolished slavery to the United States and its territories. Texas, as a part of the Confederacy, was resistant to the Emancipation Proclamation. On June 18, 1865, Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, to take possession of the state and enforce the emancipation of its slaves. Spontaneous celebrations erupted throughout the country when African Americans learned of their freedom. The following day, June 19th, became known as Juneteenth. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates African American freedom and emphasizes education and achievement, this day marked with celebrations, guest speakers, picnics, and family gatherings. It is a time for reflection and rejoicing, and it is a time for assessment, self-improvement, and for planning for the future. Therefore, we do hereby proclaim June 19th as Juneteenth annually and call upon the citizens of Matthews to join in celebrating Juneteenth as a day to honor and reflect on the significant role that African Americans have played in the history of the United States and how they have enriched society through their steadfast commitment to promoting unity and equality. Witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the town of Matthews to give this 24th day of May, 2021. And now I would like to recognize LGBTQ plus Pride Month. Whereas the town of Matthews cherishes the value and dignity of each person and appreciates the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And whereas all are welcome in the town of Matthews, and every family in any shape deserves a place to call home where they are safe, happy, and supported by friends and neighbors. And whereas the town of Matthews denounces prejudice and discrimination based on age, gender identity, gender expression, race, color, religion, marital status, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical attributes as an affront to our fundamental principles. And whereas the town of Matthews appreciate the cultural, civic, and economic contributions of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus, LGBTQ plus community, which strengthen our social welfare. And whereas Pride Month began in June of 1969, on the 1-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising in New York City, after LGBTQ plus and allied friends rose up and fought against police harassment and discriminatory laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. And whereas it is imperative that young people in our community, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers and community leaders. And whereas despite being marginalized, LGBTQ plus people continue to celebrate authenticity, acceptance, and love. Therefore, we do hereby proclaim June as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in the town of Matthews and urge residents to recognize the contributions made by members of the LGBTQ plus community and to actively promote the principles of equality, liberty, and justice. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the town of Matthews to be affixed this 24th day of May 2021. I would like to present both of these proclamations to our Cultural Diversity Committee Chair, Natisha Rivera Patrick. And you wish to say a few words as well?
Thank you. As the chair of the Cultural Diversity Committee, it brings me great pride, no pun intended, to accept these monumental proclamations supporting Pride Month and recognizing Juneteenth. This is a powerful step from the commissioners and the mayor in supporting the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts put forth by the Cultural Diversity Committee. We appreciate and applaud the willingness you have shown to learn more about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues and how you as a municipality can have positive impact in affecting change. LGBTQ Pride Month commemorates the events of June 1969 and works to achieve equal justice and equal opportunity for LGBTQ plus Americans. During TQ plus Pride Month, we commemorate the events of June 1969 and commit to achieving equal justice under law for LGBTQ plus Americans. The Stonewall Uprising marked the beginning of a movement to outlaw discriminatory laws and practices against LGBTQ plus Americans. In words of former President Barack Obama, these issues affect not only the LGBTQ community, but also our entire nation. As long as the promise of equality for all remains unfulfilled, all Americans are affected. If we can work together to advance the principles upon which our nation was founded, every American will benefit. Juneteenth, June 19, 1865, that's when Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger announced to locals in Galveston, Texas that the Civil War ended and slaves were free. This was 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Generations of African Americans have commemorated this day as Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day or Emancipation Day, to celebrate the end of slavery in the United States. To date, 47 states and the District of Columbia have recognized Juneteenth as a state holiday. I will close with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. "If the cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we now face will surely fail. Because the goal of America is freedom, abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with America's destiny." Thank you all.
Thank you, Natisha.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next agenda item, item 6, receive an update on COVID-19 from our Emergency Operations Center Commander, Rob Kinnenberg.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Today marks the 437th day that we've been dealing with COVID through the incident management system. Current counts as of this morning are 112,336 cases in Mecklenburg, 973 deaths. There are currently 21 clusters in outbreak status across the county. Most of these are long-term care facilities. Matthews has 81 residents in isolation in 63 locations. Over the last 2 weeks, 112,336 cases represents a 1.29% increase over the previous 14 days, down from 1.87 2 weeks ago. 973 deaths represents an increase of 1.78, which is down from 2.11 2 weeks ago. So we have definitely hit a positive note. In the last 2 weeks, on May 11th, the CDC issued new mask guidelines, and on the 14th at 1:45 p.m. on a Friday, the governor lifted virtually all mask and occupancy capacity restrictions statewide, leaving the decision to continue those restrictions up to individual businesses or jurisdictions. Healthcare settings and public transportation still require masks. Matthews, like many other municipalities, has chosen an honor system approach to mask wearing in town facilities. In Mecklenburg County, we continue to see decline in all key matrices. The 7-day new case average is at 98. Our goal was 100. We're below 100. The positivity rate is 3.8% of those testing positive. Our goal was 5. And cases per 100,000 population is 61.8, and our goal was 75. So we are down in all the right measures. The hospitals today are reporting their lowest hospital census of 121 on average for 7 days. Public vaccination efforts continue. 46% of Mecklenburg County residents over the age of 18 are partially vaccinated, and 38% are fully vaccinated. We have concern that we will never reach the 50% adult vaccination mark, given the relaxation in mask and occupancy and social distancing requirements. Those who received the very first round of vaccinations by Mecklenburg County Public Health have now reached the 6-month mark in their vaccination. Guidance on COVID vaccine booster requirements is anticipated to come later this summer. We continue to push community vaccination sites across the county. The in-home vaccination program is winding down, and Bojangles operations are transitioning to drive-through, and numerous sites are available but underutilized across the county. County emergency management efforts, including the policy group, regular briefings, and regular daily EOC operations, have or will cease on May 31st, marking 444 days that we've been dealing with COVID. COVID-related issues are now considered by most as part of normal day-to-day administrative activity. Emergency management now shifts their focus to nuclear facility preparedness planning, training drills, and hurricane season. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Chief Kinnenberg. Are there any questions for Chief?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I do want to say Chief Kinnenberg has been a steady hand through this crisis, very factual, knowledgeable, and he's a great asset to the town of Matthews.
Thank you. Hayes.
Absolutely agree.
Thank you. We're not done yet. It's truly a team effort, and we have a great team here in Matthews. Police Department, HR, and town administration have been, Maureen's been on the phone every day. It's been an all hands team effort. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We'll move on to agenda item number 7. Are there any items to be added to the agenda, Hazel?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Lori, I understand we have one person that's going to speak remotely.
We have one public commenter, Mr. Tom Tremblay. Mr. Tremblay, we're going to show a 4-minute clock, and once the countdown starts, you may begin. Give us just a moment.
Can you tell me if you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you.
My apologies. We will just let you know when your 4 minutes are up, sir. You may begin whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. Hello, my name is Tom Tremblay, and I'm president of the Trade Street Town Owners Association, and I'm appearing before you representing the interests of the owners of our 43-unit townhome community on the southwest corner of North Trade Street and Highway 51. Some of the other board members are present here as well. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board on this matter, and hopefully you have all had a chance to review the material provided to you last week. As I wrote in that material, this matter involves the ownership of some of the public roads owned by our association, namely Chimney Hill and Overwood Drive. These roads serve as the only vehicular access points for Walgreens and the primary vehicular access point for Metro Credit Union and the Loyalist Market Restaurant. The association recently learned that we own these roads, and we have endeavored to turn them over to the township, as should have been done years ago, but we've hit a snag. How or why our association became saddled with these roads is unknown, but it happened shortly after 2008, following the bankruptcy of the developer Kahn Properties. The original Matthews Township Gateway development called for 3 parcels to be developed. The townhome parcel with private roads, and the Walgreens and Bank Retail Center parcels with public roads. The original plan called for the developer to turn over the public roads to the town, but this was apparently never done. Despite this, Walgreens was built with access only from these roads, and the Retail Credit Union building was permitted access to Overwood Drive just a few years ago when it was built. When we attempted to turn over the roads last year, the township commissioned an inspection study that they later presented to us, identifying numerous and costly repairs that the association should not and could not be responsible for, nor could we afford. For the past 13 years, these roads have been used almost exclusively by the employees and customers of the businesses on these parcels and the citizens of Matthews. or transient motorists as cut through to other township roads. In large measure, they have provided an economic advantage for the mentioned companies as well as the township through tax revenue. Conversely, except for the egress, the association has netted no benefit from the roads and should not be responsible for the upkeep nor the deterioration over the years or changes in acceptance standards. The problem is recognized by the township in conversations with Jay Camp and email exchanges with CJ O'Neill. It is evident that the township recognizes the conundrum that we are not developers and the developer never turned over the roads, which are used primarily for public access, and that there does not exist a solution without an override of the rules or an exception granted by this body. Even now, the township and other businesses seek usage of these roads. For example, I was very recently notified by an engineering technician from the town of Matthews that Windstream is planning fiber optic improvements that may require access approval to these roads as well. The association recognizes its responsibility to the private portion of the roads within the township, townhouse parcel, namely Dean Hall Lane, Rutledge Hill, Westshire, and the small private portion of Overwood, which are used mainly by the owners and residents. But the association has no resources to mend over a decade of wear, which benefits both prospectively and retroactively entities which shoulder no responsibility at all. The current situation is unsustainable, and without an alternative plan, the association may need to seek other remedies to mitigate further deterioration of the roads. It is our position and our request that the township take possession of these roads in an as-is basis, if at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tremblay. I'm going to ask staff to prepare a formal response. When would you think that'll be available, Hazen?
Mr. Mayor, I would say in give us 2 meetings. So
Okay.
the second meeting in June.
All right. Thank you. Move on to agenda item number 9, the consent agenda. Look for a motion to accept the consent
Mr.
agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion. We approve consent agenda A through E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And we have a motion from Commissioner Whitley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner McCool. See, we don't have to, we can just say yay or nay now, right? So all in favor signify by saying yay.
Okay.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Move on to agenda item number 10. Unfinished business. Just like to mention formally that, and for the record, that our Board of Commissioner meetings will be held in person with a remote option, with the same option also for our advisory committees to decide whether they want to meet in person or remotely. But for this board, we will meet in person from now on. Is that acceptable to everyone? That's good. Okay. Don't need to take a vote or anything on that, I don't think. Move on to new business. Item 11A, receive a monthly budget report from Teresa Falk, our new finance director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and board. It is a pleasure to be able to stand before you in person as your new finance director. And I thank you for the opportunity to serve as the finance director for the town of Matthews. I look forward to a long and rewarding relationship for both of us. And Commissioner Whitley and I will agree to disagree on what school, is the best. And my husband is a Bronco. He graduated from Fayetteville State. So,
Okay.
it's like a whole, we're all on a different, it's like a house divided, but it's all good.
My
You-
two sisters and I, we don't agree all the way all the time. They were
That's,
Winston-Salem State. grad.
that's right. What you have before you, the financial report as of 4/30/2021, which is 10 months of the current fiscal year. And it's hard to believe that the current fiscal year is almost over. But as you will see from the report, the ad valorem tax collections are at 97.4%, which is a little less than the same time last year. However, I think this is a trend that has been seen throughout the year due to COVID. However, you will notice in the next bullet that the local option sales tax collections continue to be stronger than anticipated, stronger than budgeted. And even if you go back to fiscal year 19, which was the last fiscal year without COVID, we are still trending higher than the same time during that fiscal year. So there has been a tremendous amount of growth, which is a good thing in the local option sales tax. The unrestricted intergovernmental revenues are down slightly from this time last year. However, there's really no reason for any concern, because we feel that the local option sales tax will more than make up for anything that is slightly down in this area. And as we of course have seen in prior months, recreation revenues continue to be significantly down due to the ongoing pandemic, with only 28.72% of the budgeted amount generated to date. However, the corresponding expenditures are also down as a result of the continued limitations on the types and sizes of events that can be held due to the ongoing pandemic, which hopefully with some of the restrictions being lifted, those will improve. Investment earnings are basically non-existent due to the fact that the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates to so low that there's really no money being made on money that is in the bank. Departmental expenditures are up just slightly compared to prior years' year-to-date totals, but there continues to be no concerns with the ability to remain under budget for the rest of the fiscal year. Because I do not look good in orange, and my name is now on the line. So yeah, we will not be going over budget. Tourism revenue collection is at 76.42% of the budget, which is a little higher than it was last year at this time. So that is another positive in this year's budget. However, it does still represent a $206,000 overall decline in revenues. However, we are meeting the anticipated revenues, and the expenditures are down accordingly. So as we have been doing throughout this fiscal year, we will continue to monitor operating expenses versus revenue, and we remain confident that we will be able to manage through these economic conditions. And so the fiscal impact is that April year-to-date revenues exceeded expenditures by $2.05 million in the general fund, compared to $1.68 million at this time last year. And the tourism fund revenues continue to exceed expenditures by over $561,000. And the fund was operating at a $21,000 surplus at this time last year. So we will continue to monitor the financial situation and keep looking forward to the days when we don't have to talk about COVID. Yeah, is there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
Move on to 11B, receive results from our community survey from Western Carolina University professor, Dr. Todd Collins. Mr. Collins, whenever you're ready, sir.
Good evening. Can you all hear me okay and see me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for inviting us to present. Thank you for working with us with this project. Thanks especially to Maureen, our main contact there, and Matthews. This is a great opportunity for our students. So I really appreciate you all working with us and helping them We had 4 MPA students that helped us with this project. 2 of them, Matthew Wilson and Hannah White, are here tonight, and they're going to do the majority of the presentations of the results. We have 2 students that have actually graduated. And so as you might imagine, it's a little harder to rope them into these kind of things once they're gone and left our university. But those 2 that have moved on, Sarah Joss and Addie Ward. Addie actually will be working in Cumberland County. She received her job there. So we are excited for them as well to move on, and we're excited for Matthew and Hannah, who are here tonight to help with presenting this. I did give a copy to Maureen. Hopefully you all were able to receive that. Let me say also from the outset, even after this, if there are any questions that come up about the survey, obviously with this much data, there's several ways to cut it and look at it in different ways. So if other questions come up after this presentation, please feel free to email me or have Maureen email me. Be happy to answer any other questions we can. And I also want to thank you all and congratulate you for doing this process. Trying to get community input, as you all know, is very important. That's one of our goals in the Public Policy Institute here at Western Carolina University, is to help our community partners like you all trying to gain that feedback from the public. And so I congratulate you on taking a step in that process. We have some slides. I'm not sure, Maureen, if we were able, can I share my screen now? Do I have that ability?
Yep, you can go ahead and share your screen, Todd.
Okay.
Thanks.
So you guys help me out. Can you see a screen that looks like a PowerPoint?
Yes, sir. We can see it.
Excellent. Okay. I'll just start out with some kind of the nuts and bolts, try not to get too much into the weeds about how we did the survey. But again, it's in the write-up. You guys, if there are any questions you can ask. We did complete a mail survey, a mail-out, old-fashioned paper survey. As you guys might know, there's some problems with phone surveys, with internet surveys. So we have generally kind of encouraged these for our community partners that we work with, because we're able to specifically target certain areas and trying to get as representative sample as we can. I will say we sent it out in English, and in those communities with census data that had I think higher than 10% of Latino, Hispanic residents, we also sent it out in Spanish. So we tried to incorporate both languages as best we can there. We used a stratified sampling method, and basically this is dividing the town into certain areas based on census tracts and census blocks that are representative of the town as a whole. So we look both at race and concentration. So those areas that had the highest number of residents received more possible surveys in our sample. So a stratified sample, a basic example is if 15% of your population is African-American, then you try to send 15% of those targets, your respondents, you want 15% of those to go to neighborhoods with high African-American percentages. Again, this was based on census data. We also used property ownership to get our sample. This creates some limitations because we didn't necessarily have many renters. However, according to census data, about 72% of your homes are owner occupied. So as we'll talk about in the end, maybe some limitations in moving forward. We did just target property owners. There may be some renters that, picked up the mail or whatever it was, but mostly it was going to be property owners. So we sent out 3,000 and some surveys to be, that was our target sample. Out of that, we received 536 usable surveys back to us, which represents about a 16% response rate. We would have liked to have it a little bit higher, but we sent this out in around November. So as you might imagine, there were a few things going on in November and December that may have hurt our response rate a little bit, but we think we have a pretty good sample here. And I'm going to turn it over to Matthew, who is going to take us through the next several slides.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. Briefly, I just wanted to thank the town of Matthews and the board for letting myself and the several other students that couldn't be here this evening for the opportunity to work on this survey and be with you all here tonight. And so with that, we'll just go ahead and get right into it. First, though, can I get the rest of this slide presented for me, Dr. Collins? Thank you. So while our survey was slightly more representative of Matthews than ones that have been done for you in the past, whites and older residents specifically, those over the age of 65 were still a little bit overrepresented in our survey. Additionally, while the median household income for Matthews is approximately $85,000, according to the US Census Bureau, for the latest available data, wealthier households in our survey were still slightly overrepresented, however. And can I get next slide, please? All right. And so for the general town perceptions of the town of Matthews, large majorities of our respondents expressed positive views that Matthews was a good place to live, raise children, among other things. And so with people living in Matthews, and there was also with people living in Matthews for longer periods of time, they were statistically more likely to give positive assessments than those who had lived for less time. Next slide, please. And so across the board, in terms of the perceived needs that the residents of Matthews believed were needed, while the options that were provided to them were numerous, the three areas respondents indicated in particular that were of highest need in descending order were properly managed growth and development, a need to preserve Matthews' small town feeling and the small town identity that it has, as well as a vibrant pedestrian-friendly downtown for them to utilize. And next slide, please. And so as for the job performance of the town organization itself, respondents generally gave Matthews strong marks, albeit less so for matters pertaining to matters of leadership and the right direction of the town, possibly somewhat because they weren't quite sure what to make of that question or how to respond to it, and whether they perceive development to be progressing as they believe it should be. Moreover, female respondents were statistically more likely to provide negative responses for matters of town employee professionalism and service satisfaction after controlling for other factors. And next slide, please. And so we move on to park facilities and the town residents' perceptions of their status. And so simply put, most residents have either not visited or did not have any significant impression on most of the facilities in question. While most that have visited these facilities were satisfied with the condition of these facilities, green spaces and parks, picnic shelters, and playgrounds were three facilities in particular that respondents felt that improvements could have been made to them. Not very significant populations of respondents, but the most significant for negative responses. And next slide, please. And also touching back on town services a little bit, the departments that received the highest praise from respondents to our survey included the types of surveys that you would kind of expect that are more present in people's day-to-day lives that they interact with, like police, fire, garbage, what have you. And so as we saw with question 3 in this survey, departments that respondents reported the most dissatisfaction with included those of planning and development. So we're kind of touching back on what we mentioned earlier, and streets and sidewalks and the condition of those. Despite this, however, a majority of respondents reported the road infrastructure of Matthews to be pretty good, at least. And so with that, I'll just pass it on over to Hannah for the last several slides.
Hey guys, so in diversity, most believe the community is at least somewhat accepting of religion, race, ethnic groups, and those with disabilities. The respondents were less concerned about acceptance of diverse gender identities or diverse sexual orientation, and those living in the town longer felt Matthews was more accepting. Female respondents felt Matthews was less accepting than male respondents. Next slide, please. Downtown and town events. 70% of respondents visit downtown at least once a week. If you look at the reasons to visit downtown graph in the slide, and the other reason, exercise and train watching was a big reason to visit downtown as well. The town events were not that high attended. There's a couple of reasons that it could be, even though the question asked in the last 24 months, the survey was sent out in the middle of COVID. And also 70% of the respondents were over the age of 55. And as such, some events may not have appealed to them, such as Earth and Kids in Nature Day. The most popular event was Matthew Alive and Food Truck Friday. And those that did attend events reported high levels of satisfaction. Next slide, please. Moving on to everyone's favorite topic, taxes. So in this question, we asked per $100 how much increased taxes they would be willing to pay. We started at half a penny and worked up to 2 cents. And it is important to note that we did not pair these against each other. So these would be better looked at priorities versus what actual tax improvements, tax increases residents would be willing to pay. So if we look at the most popular option, because we rank these in popularity order, so increasing greenway sidewalks, the percentage accepting some tax increase was 73%. So, but still about a quarter would not be willing to pay any tax increase whatsoever. The average tax rate increase supported was about 84 cents. And the demographic difference, older residents were least likely to support a tax increase versus younger residents for this improvement. And making streets look more attractive was the least important, with only 50% supporting any tax increase. Next slide, please. Communication and participation. So for preferred methods of communication, respondents were only allowed to select one option. Direct mailing was the most popular one. And your traditional methods, such as radio and television, were actually your least preferred methods. In town involvement opportunities, respondents were allowed to pick all the options they were aware of. Respondents were most aware of public meetings and least aware of Matthews 101. And next slide, please. And we still need more feedback from renters, younger and minority residents. It is also important to note, as stated earlier, that this survey primarily went out to property owners. We had a slightly better turnout of minority residents than the last report, and we did offer the survey in Spanish. And to reiterate, the biggest priority among respondents is monitoring development and protecting that small town feel. But overall, the satisfaction level from respondents were high. So keep up the good work, guys. And thank you.
So we're happy to answer any questions. One kind of clarification is that on the tax, again, the tax one was a tricky question because again, I think that would be a good way to think about it as priorities, not necessarily what your residents may be willing to accept. So please don't raise a bunch of taxes and say Western Carolina said to do that. But I think it is useful for priorities. And so, but that is 0.84 would be 8/4 of 1 cent. So we started at half a cent and moved up, just to clarify that. But we're happy to answer any questions about the survey, any particulars that you guys may have.
Dr. Collins, how do you think you might encourage minority renters and younger people to participate in future surveys?
So this one, because we were going after used property ownership to get the sample, there may be a way where we can go to the owners of apartment complexes and other places and try to ask if they're willing to distribute the surveys. That may be a way. Again, there are several different ways to try to get a sample when you do a survey. So some folks use property records like we do. Some use voter rolls. Some use, if there's a utilities that kind of covers the whole town or county, sometimes you can use utility records. We use property records and they're good and bads for each one of those. So I think maybe talk to some of the companies or whoever it is that owns some of the larger rental property within the town, and maybe see if you can, use their roles, use what information they have to try to target their residents. Target them with town hall meetings, smaller meetings for just those areas that have high concentrations of renters may work. If they have, community rooms at their apartment complexes or townhome complexes that are renters, That may be another way to get at that group. I think you have with any survey, there's always a kind of a distrust factor. And again, I think we ran into some problems because of the election, other things going on. So to get more minority input, maybe go to those communities directly or talk to those leaders within those communities to try to get their input.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions from the board? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate the survey. It's very valuable. I encourage all commissioners and folks in the town to take a look at that and get a lot of information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we appreciate allowing us to be part of the process. Again, if you have any questions of us, we're happy to answer that and look at the data in another way. But thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Move on to agenda item 11C, receive information on fire and EMS departments branding revisions. Chief Kinnenberg.
Good evening again. Hopefully you got a chance to look at the memo. This is another step forward in the transition of Matthews Fire and EMS from a predominantly volunteer town supported department to a predominantly career volunteer supported department. For several years, even preceding my tenure here, the department has been looking to re-identify itself. Our intentions are to rebrand the department to be more representative of the professional nature that the department has become. We are not saying that volunteers cannot be professional, but to be more representative of where Matthews Fire and EMS is going. The official name of the department will not change, Matthews Fire and EMS, but most people in the town know us as Matthews Fire Department. The name on the building represents an organization that ceased to operate in 2008. We have three major initiatives: to refresh the facade on Station 1, to update the patch and the scramble, and I'll explain that, and to refresh our uniforms. I did realize late Friday that page 3 disappeared, or page 4 disappeared, which shows the front of the building. But most of you are familiar with Station 1. It's arguably the most visible building in town that the town owns. Our plan is not to change the facade. If you've noticed over the last several months, Public Works has been working with us. We removed the trees that were down the side of the building and way outgrew the space they were in. Ralph has been great about pulling those out, replanting those. Public Works just finished replanting the area around the sign and fixing the plaza. So that won't change. The front of the building won't change. We've got some cracks in the stucco that need to be addressed. The gutters and downspouts need to be removed, fixed, and cleaned and repainted. So our intent there is simply to remove the word volunteer and move the word Matthews over into its appropriate place. The same letters, we're just moving their location. The illuminated sign in front of the building up in the upper right-hand corner is completely generic. It says nothing about the town of Matthews. So and it did not get refreshed when we made the LED improvements, and it needs work as well. So we plan to have the sign upgraded to LED, take the white generic sign material off and replace it with the patch that we intend to move toward to make that sign truly representative of Matthews, to make it specific to us. The patch. The current patch was intended to placate two groups who came together in 2008, Matthews Rescue and EMS and Matthews Volunteer Fire Department. So hence two elements of the patch to make both of them feel like a unified organization. Also at the bottom, it says that, we value volunteerism, which we still do. We are not changing that. The design of the new patch becomes much smaller. This is a 6.5-inch patch. The new patch will be a regular shoulder style 3.5-inch patch. It features the Maltese Cross, the international symbol of the fire service. It hopefully unites the department into one organization, regardless of the status of career, volunteer, or fire corps. It bears the name Matthews Fire and EMS, but the scramble is the more condensed Matthews Fire Department, or MFD. And it gives recognition to our long-standing roots in the community going back to 1954. We also plan to incorporate the scramble into the new Rescues graphics package. The uniform currently are Class C attire, which for us, that's t-shirts and polos. They will still carry the, what we call the 1222 logo. It's got the 2 station numbers, Maltese Cross, or the Town of Matthews traditional artwork, or the new Matthews Fire Department scramble. We would like to change to dark blue uniform shirts to be more consistent with emergency service work. While light blue, there's nothing wrong with light blue. They're typically more recognizable as service industry uniforms. Long and short sleeve options would be available, and a long sleeve dark blue shirt with a black tie and dress pants really makes a classy Class A uniform for those times when we need it. Officers in the Honor Guard have Class A dress coats and white shirts as part of their Class A uniform. Again, we've talked about Public Works and their efforts. The best part of this, all the money's baked into the budget. We are at the end of run on patches. We usually buy them by the thousands, and we have finally run to the end. So before we run out, we want to make the change. The 2 patches are side by side. We've gotten favorable quotes from a painting contractor to repair the cracks and repaint the front of the building, same color, and from a local sign company to professionally reinstall the word Matthews. You don't want us trying to do that. Scroll down a little bit further. So that's baked in. There's the new scramble. There's the new Class C uniform look, the dark blue shirts and the gray shirts. We sort of use those interchangeably. Scroll down a little further. There's one of our guys in the new uniform, and there's the kind of classy, confident look we are trying to produce among our members. So this was presented to the board as information. I hope no one has issues with where we're going, but we just feel it's important to boost department morale and to project the image that I think you want of the department going forward.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions or comments for Chief Kinneberg?
Chief, could you go back up to the 2 patches? Could we go back to the 2 patches? Right there. So the one you got on there is the blue one, right?
Yes, sir, this one. Yeah.
Is that, now the other one on the other side, is that the one you want to incorporate?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And those are not to scale. Again, the blue one is 6.5 inches and the black. And you know, fire service, police department, it's all about instilling pride. So we have company patches that are black and 3.5 inches. You've probably seen them. Station 12's logo is an engine company, you know, Matthews Railroad. And Station 2's logo is the cell block because they're in the back corner of the police department. They kind of like being tucked back there out of the way, and now they're actually inside a fence. So they also want to incorporate something with Butler Bulldogs, but we don't want to go too far.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. O'Neill, apparently would like to say something. If you would like to, I can do that.
Sure.
CJ, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Did you have a comment?
CJ, I don't think
You
there's a
indicated
question.
you wanted to say something.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Alrighty then.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. All right. Moving on to 11D, consider Axon Taser purchase. Captain McGuirt.
David McGuirt from the Police Department. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the board. Thank you for giving us time this evening to discuss the Matthews Police Department Taser Conducted Electrical Weapon Program. Following this presentation, I'm going to ask a big favor of you. I'm going to ask that you make a motion to authorize the Chief Pennington to enter into a contract with Axon Incorporated for the purchase of 42 tasers to be paid for over the course of a 10-year contract. This purchase will allow us to equip our patrol officers and our specialized units with the Taser CEW. It actually equates out to be 84 tasers if you look at it. And I'll get into more on that in just a minute. The Matthews Police Department currently has 48 tasers, which only 4 are serviceable and covered by the Axon's manufacturer 5-year warranty and their $10 million liability insurance. That's 4 CEWs for the entire police department. With only 1 assigned to each patrol squad, we are depriving the remaining officers of an additional less lethal force option. This contract will deliver a predictable annual cost, approximately $29,641 before taxes, and offer us the most current technology to reduce the department's liability while increasing operational performance, efficiency, and most importantly, safety. This bundled contract will provide us everything that we need for the next 10 years to include training and resources which are laid out in the proposal. Since the funding to pay for this first year is not available in the current budget and no proposal was included for the upcoming budget, the idea is the first 2 years of the contract, approximately $60,000 to be paid using asset forfeiture monies, allowing the town adequate time to budget for the remaining 8 years. With the 10-year plan in year 6, Axon will conduct an exchange of our CEWs with all new equipment, keeping us under warranty and under their coverage of the financial liability benefit offered by Axon. This guarantees we are equipped with the most current device that Axon has to offer with no increase in costs over the next 10 years. So allow me to explain what a Taser CEW is. The Taser is a product from Axon Incorporated. They're the sole source provider of this product to law enforcement, and included should be a sole source letter with that. It is sold as a use of force option to be used in lieu of deadly force. It works by deploying probes connected to the wires connected to the CEW. The CEW causes a disruption of the motor and sensory nervous systems, causing neuromuscular incapacitation or a locking up of the affected muscles. So basically it just causes them to freeze in position so that we can move in and effect an arrest on someone. It serves as an important tool used only on offenders who have become physically combative, providing officers a safe standoff distance. When deployed properly, it will incapacitate an individual for a 5-second period of time, which is ample for officers to move in and begin effecting an arrest without harming the officers and causing little to no harm to the individual beyond the 5 seconds of immobile discomfort. We are far beyond the need to replace our current CEW inventory. If we do not do this, we are limiting our officers' use of force options when de-escalation techniques have failed and they are required to use force, increasing the chance of physical injury to officers and the offenders. We are bound as leaders to ensure that our officers have the tools necessary to effectively perform their duties and de-escalate violence. There remains the inherently ugly side of policing that requires our officers to use force to de-escalate violence at times. Providing them with the CEW offers an additional reasonable force option. In addition to the benefits of having warranted CEWs for the next 10 years, we will be able to provide extensive training equipment to further our use of force training in relation to the use of the CEWs. This equipment will allow us to deploy between 4 and 8 training cartridges each year to improve efficiency. Officers will be able to employ these cartridges on static targets as well as a live moving target. I think we can all agree that training is and will be what makes our officers capable of performing their duties with a reasonable expectation. The purchase of the Axon Taser 7 units by the Matthews Police Department aligns with the town's strategic plan, plan goals of public safety and operational performance. by providing the most up-to-date equipment and providing an additional option for when the use of force is required. We are assuring a safe work environment for our employees and a safer town for the residents. Additionally, we are increasing the individual's officers and the department's operational performance through training and increasing decision-making abilities, therefore allowing our appropriate levels of force to be applied. Again, I'm going to ask that you make a motion to authorize the chief to enter into a contract with Axon.
Captain, just, the manager signs those contracts.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it would be, yeah, contract with the town of Matthews. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
We'll get it straight.
Okay. That's all I have. If there's any questions.
What happens at the end of 10 years? Are they all obsolete and we have to buy them again?
Yes, sir. We'll be in the same situation that we are now, but that gives us plenty of time to kind of plan on what to do for the next 10 years.
And they are, as you said, sole source. There's no competitive model.
That is
taser.
correct, sir.
Commissioner Whitley.
Do you by chance have a sample of that?
Actually, I do, but I do not have it here with me tonight.
Okay, and reason I'm asking that, you know, there's a case where this woman called her taser, but actually used her pistol to shoot a suspect. Is it clear, identified with this new taser, that an officer knows the difference from a taser than his service weapon?
Yes, sir, and it is
Her
current
service.
practice. I'm sorry. Were you finished, sir? I'm
Or
sorry.
his or her service.
Yes, sir. It is current practice, and it's in our general order that the taser devices that we currently have are worn opposite of the weapon, of the pistol, and they are yellow. The ones that we would be getting are yellow in color to help further identify that it is not a firearm.
Is this the top of the line taser for today?
Yes, sir. It is the current latest model that they sell.
Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Urban.
So, Captain, you're talking about taking funds from other avenues at the moment. So is this total cost inclusive of that? How's this, what are we really appropriating? If you already have line items for dollars coming in, are we really appropriating this total amount, or is it less technically 2 years of this amount?
I'll let the chief answer that, sir.
The money guy, we know that. Now we're in trouble.
We currently have funds available in our federal asset forfeiture monies. So that's what we're appropriating or going to use to purchase at least the first 2 years.
So it is a 10-year contract. So the town would be committing to a 10-year agreement for these
Okay.
tasers.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is you have found resources for the first 2 years,
That's
is what I'm
correct.
hearing.
Right.
So in bureaucratic terms, you only have to fund 8 more years.
Right. And if there's more money in the asset forfeiture in year 3, we may be able to use it. We're not totally sure we can, but.
Correct.
Okay.
And we currently do not have any available after this. Now, will more come in?
Sure.
Sure.
Well, I
But-
guess the question is, we're in budget time.
Correct.
And so this is, I'd like to be able to get out of that conversation. That's fine.
Can I answer one thing that the mayor brought up, if you don't mind? Mayor, you talked about 10 years. Are they obsolete at that point? Remember, these are electrical items. They will fail. So they only guarantee them for 5 years. And if they fail or have some issue within that 5 years, that's when they give us, or they cover us under that $10 million liability. All right. So that's why they consider it an electrical equipment.
I guess what's really unfortunate is there's no competitor, so they can charge whatever they want. And if you want a taser, that's what you got to pay. And it's a monopoly, right? Commissioner Whitley.
So what I'm hearing you say, Chief, and I'm familiar with the seizure money because we see some money, but now my thinking is that if you're going to use your seizure money for equipment, that's what we did as well too. I think that's good, but I think what you're saying to this board is that you're putting it off for 2 years and hoping, so 22, 23, hoping a budget somewhere in 2024 will fund you back. Now, my thinking is I think you should fund the whole 10 years and put your seizure money back to use for other things, so radios and whatever else you had. Hopefully in 2 years, we would be out of the crisis where we can fund that whole thing. Is that what I'm hearing that you're saying? Your first 2 years, you funded it out of your seizure money, and then the next, hopefully it'll be budgeted in 2 years from now.
My goal is yes. I can't budget or I can't commit more than I have.
I got you.
We don't have any more than the 2 years.
Mayor Pro Tem.
And the good thing about seizure money, that's drug money that you get, and the town get back part of that. And that's a good thing because that money comes back to the town, and that's where they use to be able to stay abreast of all the equipment. So I'm all for that.
Charlie, you had a comment?
Just briefly though, you will be funding a 10-year contract for the finance director to sign off on that you're committing those funds. Now, it's a budgetary process on the first 2 years where the line item won't come out of the general funds. It will come out of seizure funds or whatever funds that they're able to work out, but you're still committing the next 10 years
That's good.
for the payment of that equipment. Now, in the interim, if you find other funds that can be utilized other than your general revenue funds, that's fine too, but that's a budgetary process.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner, do you have a comment?
I have two comments, I guess. The first comment or question, so there's a 5-year warranty. So we'll be paying for these 5 years after the warranty is up?
So the way the plan is in year 6, Axon comes in and completely replaces all the equipment. So the 10 years like I said, will actually covers the cost of 84 tasers. So we'd purchase the initial 42. We're paying on those, and then in year 6 they come and they completely replace all 42. So that would keep us within that 5-year warranty period for the next 10 years.
Starts over again. Okay. And my next comment is for Hazen and Becky, if she's online, who are both going to cringe when I say this. But today we listened to an ARP funding webinar. And at the end of the webinar, they stated this particular lobbyist believed that police equipment could likely be paid with ARP funds. So if we pay for 2 years with these funds that the police have, and then after that, pay for the following 8 years with ARP funds, you would stop maybe it's not a big savings, but it's, it would be about $8,000 in savings when you aren't.
It is an interesting question. I think, Mayor Pro Tem, I think the short answer is I'm not sure. And I think with most cities across North Carolina, it's fine to be, they're going to let this play out. They're going to learn, and things will get clear, and the final rules will come out in July. And of course, we have a budget that we're talking about. So I didn't quite hear the equipment portion of that. I heard everything related to, it's very COVID specific. Now, revenue losses opens up the process to lots of things. So, one option, I wouldn't recommend this option, but one option is the board could say, let's do nothing right now. Let's let COVID possibly pay for it in the fall or whatever. But, these only 4 of them are within warranty. So it just that sounds negligent, maybe a strong word, but let's get these things up to date. Maybe in year 3, maybe we can pay for them. I don't know if you could pay for all 8 years. My guess you'd have to stop at 26 or, however long these COVID dollars are available, if they're available for equipment. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. I'm thinking that if they're paying for 2 years and we find out in 3 months or 4 months that the dollars are available to pay for it, at that point we can say, okay, we're going to take this ARP cash and put it towards this equipment.
Yeah, I don't know if we could trade, but I think we could go for the next year and say, okay, year 2, we're going to use COVID money in year 2. Okay.
Any other comments, questions, or motion? Commissioner Whitley?
My only thing, if we get clarity on it, Renee, why not pay for it and be done with them?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I mean,
Instead of 10 years,
because if we got
I
9,
see, I
you follow
understand
what I'm
now.
saying?
Yeah, so I guess the way I would leave it is, I think we should pay for 1 year to get the process rolling. If we learn something different, let's say in the fall, that you could pay for the whole thing, we should just pay off $270,000. I
And be
understand what
done
you're saying now. Yeah, we could do that as long as it's legal,
That's
right?
That's right. You don't look good in orange, right?
Seems to be a popular comment tonight.
I mean, it's the police department, so are they gonna, who are they gonna come after?
Commissioner McCool.
If we do come back in, July, we find out that ARP funds can fund it. I personally would like to see that their funds from the seizures be replenished and they can keep their, $50-some thousand and put it back into other things.
Okay, fair point. Any other questions or comments or motions?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead,
I'd
Commissioner
like to
Whitley.
make a motion that we authorize the chief of police to enter into.
Town manager.
Oh, yeah, just.
Wait, I'm just reading from.
I misspoke.
That's all, no problem. I authorize the town manager to enter into a purchase agreement to purchase 42 Taser -7 conduct electric weapon as quoted in the Atrium contract. Is that right?
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Whitley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner McCool. All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just want to also thank you guys. This is a much needed resource for the officers. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the mayor's report. The only thing I have is several of us attended the police awards, promotions, and retirement ceremony this evening. It was very nice. And want to again thank all those that received awards and promotions. It was recorded, so others can watch that. Is that on YouTube, Chief, or
It'll be on Facebook.
on Facebook? On your okay. And Lieutenant Ruby was the officer that retired after 30 years of service, and 24 here, I think. Is that right? 26. So we're thankful to him and wish him all the luck in the future. That's all I have. Attorney's report.
No report, Mayor.
Town manager.
No report, Mayor.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
We need to wait a couple hours.
It's a pretty short meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Whitley, second by Commissioner Urban. All in favor? All opposed? Good night.
We should have been meeting in public a long time ago.